So thanks for joining me, guys. And I thought I'd start this off by discussing a little bit about this journey into firearm ownership and the choices I've made, and to discuss a little bit about the directions that I go with a lot of this stuff, and to sort of explain you guys what I think is a rifle that you guys can start looking for out there, which I think has tremendous value and tremendous quality. And this video is going to start about with discussing the Remington 700. Now, the Remington 700 itself is an old design by all accounts. You know, it's a rifle whose primary issue was done in the early 60s. And there's a lot of choices out there. I mean, you've got great entry to mid-level stuff from Savage, from companies like Ruger. The Ruger American is a great rifle. There's a lot of synthetic stocks out there that make up a big part of what the entry-level market is. But I'm going to discuss with you guys where I think the Remington 700 is actually a great choice, and what are the caliber choices I've made, and to discuss a little bit what I've got on my side and how I chose what I got and what made me choose the specific rifles that you're going to see tonight. You're going to see two specific rifles from Remington, and I think it's going to give you guys a good perspective on why I think the Remington 700 is not just a great rifle, but we like to talk about stuff that could be passed on for generations, and I think that that's a great rifle in itself. So the first rifle I got, there was a lot of choices out there, and I had a little budget that I had in mind. I know that, like a lot of people, I started off with a simple budget of around $500. And the more I looked around, the more choice I saw, the more that, to a certain extent, I decided, after trying a lot of stuff with synthetic and plastic stocks, that, yeah, and then I tried some higher end stuff with nice walnut stocks, and right away I knew that I wanted a walnut stock. So ironically, the first thing I did was uh, I went to my Benelli dealer. I had seen the Lupo, but I had seen the Lupo with a synthetic stock. I had heard they had one with a walnut stock that would be coming out, and they told me that those would probably be delivered sometimes in late 2023, 2024. I'd heard about the Sacco 100. I had seen some Sacco 85s, Sacco Deluxes, and I said, you know what, if I'm going to drop 2 G's on a rifle and I'm going to take my time to put money aside, there was stuff out there that I could have bought, and they happened to have the rifle that I ended up buying, which was a great deal in Canadian dollars. I think 500 Canadian dollars would amount to about 350 US dollars. But what I ended up stopping my choice on, and I just want to reassure you guys, these rifles, everything I want to present to you tonight, I checked for safety. So make sure that there's no rounds, the action is clear. And I stopped on the Remington 700. Now, why did I choose the Remington 700? Mike Walker's design is actually pretty interesting in the sense that it was built as an alternative to one of the most popular rifles out there, which was by then the Winchester Model 70. And it's not a rifle that comes without its issues. You know, there's been stories out there, of course, of what happened with those triggers. But there was a lot of arguments that it had going for it that I knew. And this is an ADL model. Now, what's an ADL model? I'm going to explain all that. But just to come back to what I was talking, there was a lot of things that, when it came down to it, made me realize that value wise, this was something pretty hard to beat. And I'll explain to you also the caliber choices I made for this Remington 700 rifle, and then you're going to see the second model that I got. So what is the ADL? ADL in itself was at the time, the ADL stood for average deluxe, and average deluxe literally means that this was the entry level point for the Remington 700. You're going to notice a lot of things where the rifle stock itself is pretty linear. This is a 1981 model, a pretty good year for those. Really nice glossy walnut stock, and what's pretty interesting with these is that the finish that you see, this glossy finish, is actually RKS finish, which is very plastified. A lot of people, I think Remington did too, describe this as the bowling pin finish, bowling pin finish, and you really feel it. This is if you ever played bowling, you have that real gloss in here that makes it comfortable, sure, but also makes this rifle to a large extent, very different from the satin stocks that you see nowadays that really give a different feel and finish to this. Now, the checkering that you see on it too, you see this checkering over here? Now, this isn't hand cut checkering. This stuff was, from what I understand, burnt into the rifle to make the production process a little bit easier for Remington. So sure, they've cheapened out on some stuff, which for these for the price wars that were going on at the time is pretty interesting. But at the same time, you have with these rifles a pretty good package where on a lot of stuff they didn't cheap out. Remington love to pride themselves that for the bolts on these, well, the overall what you had was what they called the three rings of steel. Bolt itself is pretty heavy duty, and this thing has seen action. And you see, this thing has actually some jeweling on it on the bolt itself. So yeah, overall they went. I guess that this was a pretty good, especially for the time when these came out. I think in the 1960s when they came out, they didn't have that jeweling, but overall there's some stuff that you can feel that they did go pretty entry level with, and some stuff that they actually went the extra mile with. It's a really nice and smooth bolt. Like when I'm telling you guys it's smooth, this is a really smooth one. And I think in 1981, for what you have, and this, like I said, this thing has seen a fair bit of action. I had the gunsmith look at it and actually spent a fair time with this thing to make sure that it shoots true and that it's a great MOA action. It's got a great MOA, accuracy. This thing is pretty good. I went with the Vortex Viper 3 to 9 by 40. I think it's a pretty good scope overall. Even if whether you're on a budget or not, it's a pretty good scope. Kept the Weaver rings on it, those old Weaver rings. Originally it came with one of these old-timey HEC scopes, CHC scopes. I don't know much about these. I've Googled it, but I couldn't find much. And remember, this video is going to be about two rifles. ADL. Blind mag. No flap over here that allows you to open it up to unload. So this thing, I think, no magazine door. This thing was pretty simple. You basically top load it through the blind mag over here, push your bullets in, and then that's it. That's all she wrote. Very smooth trigger. Now I want to reiterate, I did check, everything is clear, everything is easygoing. This thing still has its iron sights on it. I don't know if you guys see it. So right over here. Yeah, I still have the piece over here for the iron sight. I have it in a plastic bag somewhere in one of the cases. But a very smooth trigger, very light, very, very easygoing. You've got a great rifle here. And if you're going for a first rifle, I can't recommend these enough. The ADLs, it's perceived that because they don't have the door here, the name escapes me what that door is, but I'll come back to me in a second. These things were a little bit stiffer than the BDL models, the better deluxe models, which had it to evacuate your ammo in case you had a jam or if you just wanted to unload it quickly. Really good stuff from Remington. You have to love it. I changed the butt pad. I put something a little bit more modern, but overall, couldn't be happier with this thing. 30-06. Why did I choose 30-06? To a large extent, down the line, I wanted to go hunting with this, and I really wanted a sort of a one-size-fits-all rifle. I know some people say that for varmint and the smaller game, this is a little bit overkill and 30-06, but inexpensive cartridge, inexpensive bullet, really, really with the modern changes that they've done on the 30-06 over the years, I mean, this is not 30-06 from early 20th century. These bullets today have a lot of modern ballistics to them, and I didn't want to. I mean, I do have something in 308 in with a Browning BLR, but I wanted something that was a bit more heavy duty if I was going to shoot with these. And like I said, you can't go wrong with these. A lot of the newer Remington 700s, there's the Senderos, there's a lot of new models out there, but I think you'll really enjoy these models. I really enjoy the vintage 700s. I know that Remington is doing a lot of new stuff, like under new ownership, but the stuff I have isn't from new ownership. I have tried some of the newer stuff, and I have to say that overall, they've sort of stayed true to what they've been doing right. I like to see a lot more wood models. I'd like to see them do a lot of what companies like Tika and Sako are doing with that high-end wood. That's, even though it's high-end, is light. This isn't a light rifle. This is, I think, 8.4 pounds without the scope. And you have a lot of lighter stuff out there, that's for sure. But I thought I'd tell you guys about this ADL for starter. This is the first part of this video. I'm going to talk about the second part. What's special about this 1981 that I liked? I wanted the shrouded firing pin, which these get. The safety works a little bit different on these, you know, and they have you have the safety here, and I think the year after that, in 1982, the safety actually blocked the bolt. But I've seen some that do. I see some that don't. It's a little bit all over the place. But once again, beautiful bluing, beautiful bluing on this. I have to say, this thing looks absolutely stupendous, attractive, very attractive rifle. And you know, if it was a situation where I could only have one rifle, I think that this ADL in particular is a pretty nice piece of gear to have, a nice firearm. And so that's the first part of this video, where I want to discuss this Remington ADL, this Remington 700 ADL. Now, after a while, I wanted something a little bit different, and I know that I saw a great thing happened, which the Last of Us show came out on HBO, I think it was. Great show. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I noticed that Bill and Frank, Bill actually was actually using one of these, a Remington ADL, 700 ADL, which I thought was pretty cool to see it on TV. You know, a lot of people tend to dismiss these, but I think Bill, whatever his character, is a fictional character. I mean, he definitely knew a lot about guns. He had a nice arsenal, but this is the rifle that he chose to push back the, you know, at some point he had, people try to invade, raiders try to invade his camp, and this is actually what he pushed them back with. So whoever did the armory in that show has great taste. Can't take that away from them. So the second rifle I'm going to tell you guys about is sort of the choice I made when the show came out, and I said to myself, you know what, I really want a BDL, and it became my primary rifle. You guys are going to see some differences off the mark. Like, forget the fact that it has a bipod, but you guys are definitely going to see some differences in the way this looks. It's actually also on 30-06. You know, why not? You know, the one bullet type, I'm pretty consistent. A lot of my stuff is in 308 or in 30-06. But this thing is a fair bit different, and we're going to talk about it. So this is a Remington 700 BDL. Now look at the wood on this thing. This is absolutely unreal, the quality of the wood on this one. I think if you saw them side by side, you'd see the difference between the walnut on the ADL and the 81 and the finish on this BDL. This is two completely different animals. And actually, without a scope, this weighs a whole pound lighter, than the ADL. That one's from 1981. This one's from 1995. Again, I just want to emphasize that these have been checked to be safe. There is nothing in the chamber, nothing anywhere, so we're good to manipulate those. I'm just going to undo this little thing here just to show you guys this thing from a little bit up close. Now we're sort of closing in on what some people are calling Remington's early golden age. Now, when you talk about that golden age, the thing that people mainly talk about is that period where Remington went through a tough time with these triggers, with the Mike Walker design triggers. And the main reason I think at that time, the people at Remington sort of took a more confrontational approach to the way they were dealing with a lot of stuff to try to push back against the accusations that they were doing defective rifles. I think that the new people at Remington seem a lot more in line with how people want the rifles to be perceived and how they want the future of this company to appear. But there's something a bit particular about these things, which I'm going to show you. So the term I was looking for was floor plate earlier when I talked about the ADL not having one. The BDLs had the difference where they came with a floor plate that allowed you to actually eject the ammo when you weren't when it wasn't being used, or when you wanted just to clear the chamber on its own. But this one that I'm holding in my hands, this beautiful Remington 700. Oh, look at the little ebony tip here, with the wood being a little darker. Like you can see that even compared to the ADL, the checkering is a bit different. So you see the pattern on the checkering here is a little bit more simple than the checkering pattern that you're going to see on this BDL. I'm just going to show you what I mean by that. Yeah, as you guys can see, it's a little bit different. Well, actually, it's a fair bit different, but I think it's actually beautiful, beautiful checkering on this BDL. The BDLs are a different level, I think you can say, on the whole, from the ADLs. A lot of stuff you're going to recognize. The bolts are similar, very smooth bolts, very smooth action on these things. I mean, I know Tikkas and a lot of similar rifles have great, great, great smooth actions and smooth bolts, but goddamn, these things are absolutely impeccable and easy to really manipulate quickly. And this is, you can rough them up a little bit. These things aren't afraid to be roughed up. But I did say there was something different about this Remington model. And it's not just all the little black accents that you're going to see here. This one has a little bit different of, as a Pachmeyer or Pachmeyer recoil pads. I think that's the way you pronounce the brand. But what's different was this one is that in 1995, this is the reason why I chose it. In 1995, Remington decided to do something different. And what they did that was different is that they noticed something that I mentioned to you guys, the Lupo earlier in the video, and I mentioned the Tikkas. Well, they all have something. Well, a lot of them have something that this Remington has that a lot of actually modern Remingtons don't have. They didn't do this for that long. And what I'm talking about is a detachable magazine. This Remington 700 has one of these metallic detachable magazines. And I'm going to show this to you right now. So this is what I'm talking about. Two little clips on the side, and off comes the magazine. And I didn't see a lot of stuff out there about these magazines, but I don't think I found a single thing on YouTube about this thing, but feel free to prove me wrong. And even though this is a 30-06, you guys will often see these BDLs with two recoil lugs. I believe that's what these black points are. I could be wrong in the way it was explained to me, but one little black dot over here. And once again, detachable magazine. You can load 5 30-06 cartridges in there. If you guys notice, it says over here, long action non-magnum. So that's what these are. And like I said, very simple to put in, very smooth, very easy to really play with these things. They really are easy to fit in. And that's what's interesting about those, is that even though they have the detachable magazine, remember how in the ADL I was talking about you could top loading it? You can actually still top load this thing. So if you want to use it like almost like a traditional BDL, you can actually do it with this thing. Very clean, very smooth. This one is really on another level where what I mean by that is that uh, I find that to get the sort of fit and finish that you'd get from one of those these wood finished beautiful 700 Remington 700s, you'd probably spend a pretty penny nowadays. It's not unusual that you'd find these Remington rifles for under $1,000. Yeah, I think most of them you'd get about 700, $800. They're not, they don't have that same perception that they had, and I think that's too bad. Now, in the case of this one, in case you ask, I put some Swarovski Z3 glass on it. Great scope, very light for a rifle. Ironically, this one's about 7.2 pounds, so a whole pound lighter than the ADL. But it's just to show you the sort of variance that you can have with Remington rifles. I do encourage you when you're getting these things to really try them out. They really are pretty exceptional if you know what you're looking for and if you know what you're trying to get. I on my end, have to say that I was surprised with the amount of, especially when it came to weights, finish on the woods. Here you go, you have that same sort of hard varnish on this one that I had on the ADL. But like I said, this thing is a lot lighter than my ADL. Kicks even though they're both in 30-06, it kicks a little bit less than the ADL. But I have to say that I've grown the reputation the ADL has. They are pretty accurate rifles. This is not, child's. This is not a toy. This is a real serious hunting rifle. Whether you're into whitetail or much bigger prey, this is stuff that really gets the job done, and these Remington 700s really get the job done. A few other notes about this BDL that we could discuss. The triggers are very similar, same very light trigger that you had on the ADL. You find it again in 1985, so from 1981 to 1995 triggers feel pretty much exactly the same. There's a lot of consistency in these Remingtons. One thing is for sure, they didn't really try to reinvent the wheel when they made these. They really stayed true to a formula that started in 1962, except, like I said, for this one with the detachable magazine. If you see one out there, the price is great on these detachable magazine models. Absolutely grab it. These are worth getting. These are great rifles. They'll get the job done. They'll be reliable. And if you want to treat it like an heirloom to pass on from generation to generation, I mean, can you imagine a better rifle than the Remington 700? I mean, hey, if the people doing their research talking about the end of the world chose this rifle, I mean, they must have had their reasons, and I'm sure there was a lot of choice out there. But like, I'm talking about the Remington. There was a lot of Winchesters in there. Winchester 70 is a great rifle. On my end, the one thing I would suggest, though, a lot of these things will come with older glass. This one came with a clear field, like I said, and at the time, well, the one thing I liked about these scopes, you don't realize the difference between these scopes and the kind of scopes you get nowadays. The difference is absolutely stunning. What they've done with modern glasses on a whole other level, and it's absolutely worth to have a look at what modern glass can do for you. Uh, I know that Vortex does great stuff. If you really want to spend something and you know, if you can afford it and if you can afford the finances, really give the modern glass a shot. I think you'll be surprised what you're going to be getting. And on my end, I promised I'd make this video under 25 minutes if I could. I think I did a pretty good job at that. But look at the Remington 700. There's a lot of stuff out there. Sendero is a great rifle. They have a lot of Varminter stuff now that they're doing, which is pretty good stuff. The synthetic stocks look good. They shoot true if you want an accurate rifle out of the box. I think that a lot of you could do a lot worse than the Remington 700, but I truly encourage you to have a look at this rifle and give it its chance. Remington is rebuilding a lot. I've seen a lot of videos out there of all the improvements that they've done on their modern stuff. I've tried the modern stuff. I love it. I went for the older stuff because, in my case specifically, I really wanted a detachable magazine. And most of the ADLs they were making nowadays were actually made of plastic, the stuff without the floor plate. If there was one piece of advice I could give Remington today, just there's a space to be had out there that right now is being dominated by companies like Tika, Bergara, Hawa. Uh, and I think that that place is for them to take back if they really go back to actually what gave them so much value. There's a lot of value in Americana, heritage. I hope Remington really looks at that the scope of what's being done right now in the firearm field, where people are building a lot of quality lightweight stuff, keeping the integrity of having great wood, great usability and reliability with smooth actions. And I think that this is the direction Remington should be going. If I may give an example, there was another company which was in a similar situation for over 20 years that Remington was in, and that was Fender guitars. Now, I love making this parallel because throughout the 50s and 60s, that's what people consider the golden age of Fender guitars. And then in the 70s and 80s, the perception wasn't to a lot of people that they fell off the map because they couldn't maintain the same quality that they had in the 50s and 60s when it came to the varnishes, the finishes, the woods. The guitars all of a sudden got very heavy. And I should know a lot about that because I have one of those guitars. I'll show it to you guys. So this is a Fender Stratocaster from 1981, actually like that ADL. And it really is a boat anchor. You know, this thing is heavy as hell. But there's a story in there into how in 1981 was pretty much the year where this guitar company sort of went back, sort of started the long way back to where it is today, which is a beautiful, flourishing company. And they took that market away from a lot of companies that changed the way that the market was dictated to them. And Fender took back the market shares that they had lost to a lot of Asian companies. But this guitar, the guitar that I'm holding in my hand, this is pretty much considered the worst Fender you could get. 1981 American made, US made Fender Stratocaster. And this is the kind of guitars you saw in the hands of Jimi Hendrix and all these great guitar players. And they changed the messaging. They managed to make better quality instruments. They went back to their basics. They reissued a lot of classic stuff, and they got their market shares back. They got their business back, and there is a similar way, I think, forward for Remington if they want to get back to where they were, and that is to go back to making very, very high quality stuff. And I know that it's hard, to if you're addicted to easy money, easy sales that these entry level Walmart guns can get you. It must be a quite a journey to come back to what this company is able to do best, which is the rifles I just show you, which are absolutely spectacular. But this is what I can, from my experience, I've worked in retail management. Actually, I've worked in, um, in a lot of companies that were in crisis. So I can tell you guys that there is a lot of stuff out there that are examples a company like Remington can follow if they choose. It's in their hands, but I've seen what they're doing, what the new administration, which I think are gun people, what they want to do with it. I still have my Remingtons. I still have my Lupo on back order. I hope I get it someday. But thanks for listening in, and this is my 2 cents. I passed the 25-minute mark, but this is my 2 cents on the Remington 700 and what I perceive as one of the great rifles out there, for the last 1962. So this will be 60, 70 years now that this rifle is out there, and Remington can really do something beautiful with this thing if they choose. But for that to happen, they've got to go back to what made them successful. And though I think that's for me, these beautiful stocks are what's needed out there. So thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Hopeful to make a lot more content out there if there's the support and if you guys like what you're seeing. And once again, checking out. Thanks for tuning in, and gonna have one last look at the BDL with a detachable mag before I let you guys go. And like I said, ain't this thing a beauty? And that's the Remington 700. So have a good evening, folks. And this is me checking out from Montreal.